Calaroga Shark Media.
Hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. I was just looking at the recent episodes that were a little longer. You know, sometimes I finish these and I'm like, oh, it was only like 10 minutes. And then sometimes they're like 19. Depends on how much news there is. Mediaites took a listen to the Joe Rogan podcast. I'm going to push back on their first 4 words here. They wrote, comedy legend Bobby Lee has a new movie. All right, time out. Comedy legend Bobby Lee? Really? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go outside right now and find 100 people. And I want you to ask 100 people, who is Bobby Lee? Let me know how many people go, oh yeah, comedian. Comedy legend Bobby Lee has a new movie coming out, and he wanted to talk about it while he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. If only Rogan would let him. This from Mediaites. Bobby and Rogan shared a bunch of stories about the comedy scene, how it's changed, how their politics have changed. And Rogan started ranting about COVID restrictions, the deep state, the 2000 election, the 2020 election. Mediaite quotes Rogan as saying, this is what I think, man. Okay, I think evil's real, and I think evil exists in many forms, and it exists in callous disregard for loss of life for profit. That's evil, right? And that's the thing. Like, you could say evil is the devil. You could say evil is Satan, and evil is demons, and evil is, exorcism and stuff. Look at that, baby. But also evil is profit over human life, which is real evil is cobalt mines in the Congo. When you watch pregnant women mining for cobalt, getting toxic fumes in their lungs, whether some of them have babies on their back, that's evil. They're living in dirt floors with no sanitation. It's horrific conditions. And that's in everybody's cell phone. And everybody's cell phone is the labor of essentially people so poor they don't have to choose whether they're slaves or not. There's no other option for them to work. Bobby Lee sighs a few times. Rogan continues. It's not an obligation to pay attention to everything, okay? But it's something that I think would help people break out of the cult, because that cult, it's like you think you're a good person if you buy hook, line, and sinker everything that the left says. That's crazy. These are the same people that want war. These are the same people that are encouraging censorship. These are the same people that are trying to silence dissent. That's all totalitarian stuff. And just because it's done for trans kids or for Black Lives Matter or for any social cause you think is like undeniably worthy, it's still the same thing at the end of the day. The Patriot Act still controlled people in a way that was never allowed before, and it did it under the guise that we have to stop a terrorist attack. So even if they did do evil stuff to make these things happen, once these things happen, they take advantage by doing evil stuff and they enact control over the people that never done before. The redistribution of wealth was insane. We did redistribution of wealth to big corporations and companies. Oh my God, so many people did. Billions of dollars was moved. Bobby Lee jumps in and goes, yeah, well, you want to talk about the movie? That's why I read all that. Bobby said, yeah, it stresses me out. You want to talk about the movie? Can we talk about the movie I'm promoting? Love it. Shannon Sharpe recently had Katt Williams on his podcast. Did you hear about this? Sharpe told The Root, I figured he'd go 1 or 2 minutes and get right to it. He goes for 30 minutes. Now I got to make a decision. Do I cut him off and get back to our normally scheduled programming, or do I let him go? I let him go. When it wrapped up, Shannon Sharpe saw his producers shaking his head, and Shannon said, wait, did I do something wrong? Producer said it was going to break the internet. And I said, you really think so? And he said, they're going to be talking about this all of 2024. Shannon, you don't know what you just did. He was right. On day 1, the interview had 2.5 million views. The next day it was at 14 million. I asked him how many views he think it'll do. He said 50. I said, 50 what? 50 million? Shannon Sharpe has gotten some criticism over his lax interviewing style. He said, what I found out is you let people feel comfortable with you. They'll share things they probably never shared or they haven't shared in a very long time. So your listeners are probably going to be hearing it for the first time. I'm sure there are a lot of people saying, you should have done this, you should have done that. But they aren't mad that I let Katt Williams go. They're mad it's at almost 55 million views and it's not on their platform. People stop me wherever I am. People you think wouldn't watch Club Shay Shay. I'm talking about older white men, older white women coming up to say, I just want to thank you. He says he feels zero pressure to replicate the success. Shannon says, I tell people I'm not going to be Michael Jackson. This is my thriller. Off the Wall was great, Bad was great, but what he wanted was another thriller, and that's an anomaly. I'm going to do the best work I can and do other great interviews, but I'm not going to make myself sick trying to hunt down another guest or create another topic that'll do what this did. This happened organically. It was the perfect storm. The website Black Girl Nerds wondered, is Katt Williams a top 5 black comedian? Black Girl Nerds writes, while he is a comedic force to be reckoned with, does he really have a place on the Mount Rushmore of comedians such as Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Dave Chappelle, and Chris Tucker? Well, it's really challenging to put Katt Williams among the top 5 black comedians of all time, especially when we consider the breadth and impact of people like Pryor and Martin Lawrence. We're not trying to diminish Williams' talent or influence, but rather to acknowledge the extraordinary achievement of his peers like Chappelle. So, yeah, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, who, again, is just doing a Richard Pryor cover act, but did it really, really well. Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock not mentioned by Black Girl Nerds. At least I didn't notice them mentioning Chris Rock. I think you'd absolutely have to put Chris Rock in that category, which leaves a spot. Are you going to pick Martin Lawrence, Chris Tucker? I'll throw out the name Kevin Hart. We could look at some of the kings of comedy. Plenty of people we could consider for that fifth slot there. Speaking of Kevin Hart, he was speaking with USA Today and said since his new movie was filmed in Italy, he ate a little much. I feel ya. I've been going to that smoothie place, those 700 extra calories. Whew, Johnny Mac needs to start running again. I'm doing a 5K with my wife next weekend, this weekend. You can tell I'm prepared for it. And I signed up for a 15K. That's a nice distance. I think I'm done with the marathons now. My body, that last marathon let me know, hey, we're not as young as we used to be. And half marathons even get a little bit long. I kind of like that 15K 9-mile distance. It's like a good run, but then you're not wrecked the rest of the day. Anyway, Kevin Hart said, things got out of hand in Italy. The food in Italy, I gained a little weight. There was a moment where I said, I got to pull back a little bit because this is not going to show up well on camera. I had that last week. I was at that industry conference and I stood next to my two friends and they're both thinner than I am. And my friend Chris is a lot taller than I am. And I just looked like, I don't know, the George Costanza of the group, I guess. I remember I took a picture once with Bruce Campbell. Bruce is a handsome dude. I look like such a troll next to him. Don't take a picture with Bruce Campbell. Kevin said the way his character Cyrus started out when we were in Belfast is not the way he's ending when we were in Italy. There was a lot of pizza, pasta, pizza, pasta, and wine. So making sure that you dumped it down and operated in doses, that was something I had to make a priority. I'm having fun today. Pete Davidson is set to star in a film adaptation of I Slept with Joey Ramone. Billboard reports Joey Ramone's estate is seeking to block a release of the film. A lawsuit was filed by Johnny's widow, Linda Ramone, who claims that Joey's brother covertly developed an unapproved and unauthorized Ramones-based biopic based on his own one-sided recitation of the history of the Ramones. Apparently, Joey and Johnny's estates have split ownership of the IP for the Ramones. Therefore, Linda says the film can't go forward without her permission. Matt Braunger will be at the Mystic Theater on Saturday, and he wonders about imposter syndrome. He says, we all wonder if we're going to be found out that this is stupid. It's fear of the imposter syndrome. But the flip side of the fear is the feeling that you're fooling everybody. Sometimes you want to go in an alley and cackle like a villain. He loves comedians. His influences include Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, and Richard Pryor. He says, you have to be a fan. You can't lose that. Some of us may fall into the trench of bitterness, but it's comedy. After COVID-19, he toured less. He said, one of the best things I ever did was to scale back touring. I found a way to make it work. My mental and physical health has improved immensely. He's joined a growing ranks of comedians who don't worry about red versus blue. He says, people who follow me online know how I feel about the issues, but my job as a comedian is to illuminate my views, not sell them. I love it when anyone comes to my show. Sketchfest is off today. The folks at the 800-Pound Gorilla went to see Triumph last week. Early on, Triumph, the insult comic dog, says, anyone who's offended, relax. All these jokes have been cleared by Dave Chappelle. That's great. Triumph continues. San Francisco is a great town for me to poop on, and apparently also for humans to poop on. You guys make me feel so at home. On the way to the show, I saw so many people doing my act. On the guest list, good list and a good introduction by Triumph. On the guest list, Adam Savage from Mythbusters, Triumph said, tonight you're busting the myth that you're gainfully employed. Rob Schneider, we've got a Mythbuster and a myth spreader, and Weird Al Yankovic. So many people kept their virginity to your music. The 800-Pound Gorilla writes, one of the standouts of the show were the audio answers. These were all Weird Al parodies that Weird Al never actually wrote, but instead were written by Smigel in the style of Al. Triumph enlisted some celebrity guests to come out and sing the hits, including Thomas Lennon, Dave Hill, and Amber Ruffin. The Gorilla writes, you have to admire just how much went into producing a show like this. The game show portion alone featured over 40 question and joke answers, which occasionally the contestants even got right. Triumph would give points if the answer was meaner than what he intended. For the question, in the state of California, anyone found guilty of anti-trans hate speech is automatically given this. Weird Al said, what are tickets and backstage passes to a Rob Schneider show? I have 4 more stories, but I have learned get out on the good laugh. That's it. That's your comedy news for today. I'll save the rest for tomorrow. See ya.